Hey, how you doing? So today's topic is going to be respiratory system. So let's get started.
So now moving on to the next topic of us for today is the work of breathing. What do you mean by work of breathing? Work of breathing is the amount of work that our body has to do in order for us to breathe. Okay, so work is always done against something. So over here the work is done against three main factors. The main factors are the first are the elastic forces. So what comes under elastic forces? The elastic forces is due to the presence of elastin and collagen in the lung parenchyma. The elastin gives the elastic mobility to the lungs, whereas collagen gives the rigidity and the structure to the lungs. Okay, so the work that has to be done against these forces is known as elastic forces. The second type of force is the viscous force. So the viscous force is due to the presence of the fluid and the other lung parenchyma and the entire interstitium present. So that is the viscous force. And the third is the airway resistance. So what is airway resistance? Airway resistance is the resistance offered by the trachea, the bronchioles, the bronchi to the flowing air. So the flowing of the air is can be under how this airway resistance affects can be understood due to three factors. As we can say, the three factors are the velocity of air, the diameter of the air tract, and the length. Of this, length is of least importance because the length does not change as we breathe. Okay, so this is of the least importance. The velocity, the more the velocity of the gas, the more is the collision, the more are the frequency of collisions of the air particles. So since the collision increases, the resistance offered or the velocity over a period of time decreases because of increase in the collisions that leads to loss in kinetic energy. Okay, so velocity affects the airway resistance in such a way. The diameter of the airway determines the is one of the most crucial parts of airway resistance. The diameter or the radius is inversely proportional to the airway resistance. This radius raised to the fourth power is inversely proportional to the radius of the resistance of the airway, and this is the Poiseuille's theorem. So according to Poiseuille's theorem, if the radius is small, the resistance offered would be much larger. So that is why the smaller bronchioles, the terminal bronchioles offer the most resistance. But when you combine the entire resistance of various bronchioles, various terminal bronchioles, they sum up to be approximately 10 to 15 to 20% of the resistance offered. Why is this? This is because of the parallel arrangement. The parallel arrangement of various terminal bronchioles causes the net resistance of the ducts to be less. Okay, so this is how we understand the various factors that are working against breathing and help, and the work that is done against these forces. Okay, now this is the normal compliance diagram that we have already seen. Okay, so this diagram that we have seen is normal. Now we analyze the different types of diseases, the obstructive and the restrictive diseases. Okay, so just get this out of the way. The various obstructive and restrictive diseases. If you recollect, we already discussed what are obstructive and restrictive diseases. Now we use the compliance diagram to show how work of breathing is affected in these diseases. Okay, in obstructive disease, as you can see the okay. So now first I'll tell you what represents what in this diagram. This area or this trapezium. The area of this trapezium denotes the work of breathing. The work of breathing. This trapezium denotes the work of breathing. The remaining part, that is this part of the diagram, Right. This part of the diagram represents the work done against airway resistance. This is the work done against airway resistance. Okay. So moving to the obstructive disease. So what are the example of obstructive disease? Obstructive diseases are mainly commonly the COPDs. So what do COPDs mean? These are the chronic obstructive pulmonary disorders. So this includes emphysema, bronchial asthma. These are the disorders which come under this, and these are also known as obstructive diseases. Okay. In obstructive diseases, if you notice very carefully, the work of breathing remains same. The work of breathing in normal conditions and obstructive disease is the same, but the work done against the airway resistance has increased. Why is that? The work done against airway this area has increased. Why? Because in obstructive diseases, if you recollect, the path is obstructed. That means there is a hindrance in the passage of the air. So in obstructive diseases, then the hindrance is increased. So the resistance of the entire part has increased. That leads to an increase in the work done against the airway resistance. Okay. So that is how in obstructive disease the work done over here remains the same, but work done against airway resistance increases. Moving on to restrictive diseases. In restrictive diseases, what are restrictive diseases? Once again, just revise. Restrictive diseases are the ones where the movement of the lungs as a whole is restricted, and the lungs cannot inflate properly, but they can deflate properly. Okay, this is an important part of restrictive diseases. Okay. So in restrictive diseases, as you can see, the work done has increased. This area, the work done has increased. Why is that? Because you have to do more work to overcome the extra elastic forces that are present in restrictive diseases. They are not necessarily only elastic, it can also be viscous forces that have increased, but not airway resistance. The airway resistance does not increase in restrictive diseases. That is clearly evident from this part. The area of this part remains the same. This is constant, but the work done against elastic and viscous forces have definitely increased. And the examples of restrictive diseases include something like fibrosis, consolidation, pulmonary edema. So like in consolidation and fibrosis, the elastic forces have increased, but in pulmonary edema, the viscous forces have increased. So this is how in restrictive and obstructive disease we can differentiate between a restrictive and obstructive disease by plotting a compliance diagram for it. So this is how work of breathing is to be written, and it's is frequently asked as a question in theory, and the applications of it is pretty important in the Viva also, because they ask sometimes about this. Okay, so that covers the work of breathing, and we'll continue in the next part.
So moving on to the next part, that is surface tension and surfactant. We'll first discuss surface tension. So what do you mean by surface tension? Surface tension is a force acting per unit length. Surface tension to develop requires an interface between two different mediums such as air and liquid. Okay, and the main characteristic of surface tension is that it always aims to reduce the surface area. Okay, to explain to you how surface tension works, I'll give you a simple example where this is a beaker and this beaker is filled with water. Okay, this beaker is filled with water, and this water at the surface, so the surface of this is the air water interface. At this interface, let's take an arbitrary molecule that is present. This molecule is attracted by two different things. The water molecule is present below it and the air molecule is present above it. Okay, so the force that is exerted by the molecules present below it is much more than the force exerted by the molecules above it. Okay, so that causes a net force to be developed. That net force developed is directed in a direction that is downwards, and this reduces the surface area. Okay, so this is the physics part of it. Now what's the point of studying this in biology? In respiratory physiology, you know there are these alveoli present in our lungs. These alveoli are lined with a fluid. So there's a fluid present and there's air present. So once again there's a creation of fluid air interface. So due to the creation of this fluid air interface, there will obviously be a surface tension developed, and as the surface tension develops, it will tend to reduce the surface area. If it's tending to reduce the surface area, what do you mean by that? It means the size of alveoli would decrease. So the direction of the force of surface tension would be like this, and this would cause a decrease in the size of alveoli. But okay, so this takes place in our body, but that's bad for us, right? The size of alveoli is decreasing. How is that good for us? So to counter this effect, our body has developed a mechanism. This mechanism is where our body secretes something that counters this effect or mitigates the effect. That something that is secreted by our body is known as surfactant, and we'll deal about what surfactant is in the next part. So now moving on to the next part of our discussion, that is surface tension and surfactant. So we discussed surface tension, now we move on to surfactant. So in surfactant, firstly we'll discuss what it is made up of and what its composition is. So it is made up of dipalmitol lecithin. It is also known as dipalmitol phosphatidylcholine. It's a more difficult name to pronounce and say, so this is a much shorter form of it. So since it's dipalmitol lecithin, it's a lipid, and like all lipids, it has two parts, a hydrophobic and a hydrophilic part. This hydrophilic part is present inside the fluid, that is the water, that is the fluid surrounding the alveoli. Okay, so this hydrophilic part is present over here and the hydrophobic part lies outside. It also contains apoproteins and calcium ions. These two mainly help in even distribution over the alveolar surface. Okay, synthesis. So if you recollect, I initially said there are two types of cell present in an alveoli, type 1 and type 2 alveoli. These are present equal in numbers, but the surface area covered by type 1 is much greater than covered by type 2. And why is that? That is so because type 1 has much more flatter surface as compared to type 2. Okay, so another difference between type 1 and type 2 cells are type 2 cells contain something known as lamellar inclusion bodies. So these bodies are basically the storehouses for the surfactant that is produced. The production of surfactant in these type of cells, in these type 2 alveolar cells, is in mitochondria. The surfactant is produced in mitochondria and it is stored in lamellar inclusion bodies, and there it is secreted. Okay, so that is the synthesis and storage and secretion part of surfactant from the alveoli. Okay, so the action and then moving on to the action and functions. Okay, the most important function of surfactant in lungs is in alveoli is reduction of surface tension. As you remember, I initially said the surface tension tends to collapse the alveoli and the body produces surfactant to counter that. So how does it do that? Okay, so what it does is just giving you numbers to give an idea how it does it. The surface tension without the surfactant is 50 dynes per centimeter. But when the surfactant is present in the alveoli, the surface tension reduces to 5 to 30 dyne per centimeter. So you can see how the surface tension is reduced. Thus, the collapsing effect of surface tension is also reduced. Okay, this brings us to the next part, that is how it increases the mean alveolar radius. Okay, so since the collapsing effect is reduced, the alveolar radius would increase, or you can, in other words, the alveolar radius would not decrease, so it would remain of a larger size. And this is beneficial because it reduces the work of breathing, because as you remember, I initially said the force required to keep an open door open is less as compared to open a closed door. The same thing. If the alveoli are much more open, it's much easier to inflate it. Okay, so the same thing. Moving on to the third function, that is alveolar stability. So if you remember, you studied in physics the Laplace law. The Laplace law says that the pressure inside the alveoli is equal to 2T by R, where R is the radius. So you can see the radius is inversely proportional to the pressure. So that means if the radius is less, pressure will be more. So see this diagram over here where there are two alveoli, one with a smaller radius, one with a larger radius. The one with the smaller radius would definitely have a higher pressure as compared to the larger radius one. Okay, so if the pressure here is more and the pressure here is less, how would the air move? Higher pressure to lower pressure. So air would move from higher pressure to lower pressure. If the air moves from higher pressure to lower pressure, this alveoli would continue to shrink and this alveoli would continue to increase in size. But that is not something we want in our body. Why? Because if the number, so this would lead to a decrease in the number of alveoli, thus a decrease in surface area. So the net surface area would decrease, thus the efficiency of exchange of gases would decrease. That is something we do not want. So to prevent that, how surfactant helps? If you remember, I said the surfactant increases the mean alveolar radius. Okay, if it increases the mean alveolar radius, it means that the two different alveoli would have almost the same size. If the size is almost the same, then the pressures would also be the same. Since the pressure is same, there is no exchange, there is no transport of gas from one alveoli to the other. So that way the air that way the radius remains the same, the pressure remains the same, and the alveoli sizes are maintained at a constant level, thus they are stabilized. Moving on to the fourth function, that is how surfactant prevents pulmonary edema. Okay, so pulmonary edema, so see over here, this is a pulmonary capillary, this is an alveoli. What happens normally, the fluid from the capillary flows here, and due to the surface tension there is a contracting force, there is a inward force acting. So this inward force pulls this fluid inside, leading to pulmonary edema. But if there is surfactant present, the surface tension is reduced, so the inward force is decreased, due to which the movement of the fluid from this interstitial space to the alveoli is decreased. Thus there is a net decrease in the fluid accumulated over here. This is how it prevents pulmonary edema. Okay, so this is about the functions of the surfactant in the alveoli. Now moving on to the applied part. In the applied part, as you recall, I might have mentioned something known as IRDS, Infant Respiratory Distress Syndrome. This condition is found in newborns that are premature. The premature newborns have this condition known as IRDS. In this condition, what happens, since the baby born is preterm, so the surfactant is not produced in sufficient quantity to allow normal breathing. Okay, so the surfactant is in less quantities. So if surfactant is less quantity, so what happens? If you remember the function I mentioned, one of the functions was to reduce the work of breathing. Since the surfactant is absent, the work of breathing has increased. The work of breathing has increased, so much more force is required by the baby, and his muscles and everything are not yet well developed, that cannot support it. So that leads to a respiratory distress in the child, and if not treated properly, it can be fatal. Okay, so how do you treat this? To treat this, the first thing is to supply synthetic surfactant, exogenous surfactant. Okay, the surfactant is provided in order to reduce the work of breathing and ease the process of breathing. Second thing that you do is by method of inhalation, you provide phospholipids, because phospholipids are required for the formation of surfactant. Then you can also give glucocorticoids or the corticoids to promote the synthesis of surfactant. So in this way you can treat or manage IRDS. So this is something that happens in newborns. In adults, the same thing can happen, but it is called ARDS, Adult Respiratory Distress Syndrome. This condition is acquired. That means it is due to some other infection, some other pathogens that are present in the body that lead to ARDS. Okay? Since it leads to, so there's an underlying condition. To treat this, what you do is basically treat the underlying cause for that. Okay? So since I've mentioned about collapse of alveoli and everything, there is one more term known as atelectasis. What is atelectasis? Atelectasis is collapse or partial collapse of lungs. Okay? So that can be caused due to various reasons, and this also leads to impairment in breathing. Okay, so that is all about surface tension and surfactant. I'll see you in the next part. I hope this made sense. Now you can go back and refer to your books. I'm sure you'll understand this much more better, and I'll see you in the next one.